sort of since I've been tuning into this group, it's been a revelation and an inspiration in lots of ways and so many different voices. I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? You know, what kind of criteria I'm going to use for what poems to choose? Then I thought, oh, I know, I'm going to go back about 10, 12 years. And I say I've been writing poetry or poems as long as I remember. But it's only within the last 12 years that I really took it seriously. And I got to a point where I was so re-engaging with it. And I got to a crossroads saying, well, am I really writing anything seriously good or worthwhile? And these first two poems, I think, are what I think of as watershed poems that when I wrote them, I thought, yeah, I think I'm going in the right direction here. So the first one is called Crow Road. And I think I was camping down on the Dorset coast, doing some path walks. And one morning I was stood by my tent, looking up, and I was having my breakfast, and looked at a stream of crows going across the sky. And there wasn't a flock, it was just like there were like a bunch of commuters on their way to work. And it was such a stunning image. But what was more than that, when I started writing about it, it was like halfway through, I suddenly disappeared through a wormhole into the past. And it was like a gateway kind of thing. So this is at Crow Road. Bandit squadrons, airborne in morning formation, pirate hordes, black hooded orcs, sights aimed at distant fields, black wing beats pulse with laconic, purposeful rhythm, the crosshairs of dark crow eye bearing down with unflinching intent along their daily crow road, following ancient flight paths, departing commuter belts of nesting rookeries. Then a sudden jolt of memory, returning to primeval scenes of raucous bands of black-winged hoodlums, shattering the eager dawn of adolescence when I wandered freely along my own chosen byways. Now I trace the faded line along that crow road of thirst awakenings, sights set on distant horizons, unseen destinations, invisible from this low vantage point, gazing up at marauding bands of crow. Thanks, that's my first one. And the second one is called The Coffee Drinkers. And again, it took about 2 years to write, but I remember this is again going back about 10 years, I was going to town and I'd do a bit of shopping. I'd head off to Picnic, which was a coffee shop, and I'd sit there with my coffee and cake, and I'd be looking over at the corner. It was a Costa Coffee, and they had tables and chairs outside and people sitting there. But every time I went into town, didn't matter if it was 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock, always the same people sat there. And so I got this idea, who are these people? Why are they there? Do they know each other even? So anyway, so this is The Coffee Drinkers. Under the awnings they sit, regular as an overcast sky in Reading, siphoning off the dregs of another morning, enjoying the fractured rays of sunlight, like murmuring like starlings at roost. Familiar faces, but strangers to me. A quilted patchwork merging in their random communion. A cosmopolitan chorus, each one with their own backstory, converging on this street corner sanctuary. One common denominator, time on their hands. They sit talking to their mobiles, to each other, across a quorum of occupied tables, friends, acquaintances, passing ships drifting on lazy currents of lackadaisical routine. By measured sips, they keep their places, eking out the extended welcome of their stay. These hardened loungers seem well adapted to passing the time, as time hangs loosely about their motley array, casual participants in the morning ritual of the coffee drinkers. Thanks. And this third one It's called The Street Singer, and this is again based on an observation, something that I witnessed walking down Broad Street around about Christmas time, a sort of bitter, sort of cold winter day, and suddenly hearing this voice like a muezzin, like somebody calling you to prayer. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from because all the people, shoppers, were wandering around. And then I just couldn't sort of put it out of my mind. So I walked down and I walked back and eventually found out where it was coming from. So this poem is about that. It's The Street Singer. Emerging from the cozy warmth of a Broad Street store, the voice hits, cutting through the Christmas shoppers, shambling through chilly December winds, catches my ear like a burr tossed up on gentler breezes that hibernated dark months ago. A mournful solea, delicate dissonance with sharp Eastern modal inflections, conjuring nomadic flamenco origins, speaking of rootlessness, loss and pain, which does not beg or flatter, simply bears witness. My gaze, hooked by those piercing plaintive notes, eventually locates the source, a young woman perched like Buddha on the corner of Broad Street and Station Road, wrapped in rug and woolly hat against the cold, bitter English air. The words of her song sound alien, Urdu or Arabic. I have no skill to tell, yet they sing more eloquently than any ephemeral pop song lyrics gurning out cliche dollops of heartbreak or hopeless love. It is a voice that has traveled across seamless continents, crossing invisible lines, emulating the mewling cry of migrating seabirds that recognize no borders, blocking their path along the hidden highways of the sky. A while later, turning back on my heels, she's still there with her indecipherable satyr. Meanwhile, busy pedestrians skirt round her with shifty looks, avoiding eye contact. As her song rises up, defiance against the indifference that wells up in those occupied by more pressing cares than a song for alms that rings out like a call to prayers. Thanks. I'll have a sip of water. I think one of the stages as well in kind of developing my poetry voice, I thought I'd try writing sonnets. I thought the discipline would help me focus my ideas and to try and get an idea, and you only have to put it into 14 lines. And it was quite hard, actually, much harder than I thought. I thought it'd be quite easy, but it wasn't. But I'll do two of them here. One's from a series which I call Tales from the North Country. So I was trying to remember scenes from my formative years growing up in Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria. And this one, maybe a little touch of Whitman here. It's called The Lilacs in Bloom. I remember the lilacs there in bloom in the gardens at number 92, the place I was born into the world and there made welcome. The laden branches offered cooling shade with heady streams of soft perfume, and those images of pale purplish hue are always fresh. They never seem to fade. They've travelled well, all the way from Persia, it is said. In all my memories, they have worn well too. So every year at lilac time, I'm reminded of past summer days, especially those I spent with you. Cheers. This is the second sonnet. This is, I decided to start numbering my sonnets, a bit like Shakespeare. But I don't think Shakespeare probably actually numbered his own sonnets. Probably somebody else did that for him. But this is sonnet number 29. On the way down to Amalfi. This was an Exodus holiday with a group, and we were walking down. We were staying in a place called Adjarola, which is about 600 meters up the mountains. And one of the walks, we walked down to Amalfi, which is obviously at sea level. And trying to count the number of steps. There was a lot of steps, and I did try counting some. I know it came into the thousands, so I kind of exaggerated a bit here. I saw 10,000 stars casting sheets of shimmering sparks over the crinkled mauve in Asia Bay. The gentle rays of morning sun poured over black netted terraces hung with slowly ripening fruit. And as I measured out 10,000 steps, each one took the measure of me, as if to say, step lightly as you go and keep it in your memory that you might not pass by here again. So you will keep an imprint of the tread you left to keep beside your future days. Thanks. Okay. This next one, talking about influences, I think Seamus Heaney is one of my favorite poets. And the title of this poem is taken from a line of one of his poems. So it's called Walking on Air. And the epigraph here, walk on air against your better judgment, by Seamus Heaney from The Gravel Walks. I miss the old days, but I look forward to the dawn rising up ahead. The glistening dew falling to refresh the parched earth, encouraging new swellings, to feel that cool relief on the soles of my feet, a tingling frisson of devil may care, ripped free of the past, floating above my better judgment, to dance out over a dense chasm and find myself walking on air with no sense of gravity tugging at my conscience, no clinging sense of inhibition pulling me into an unwilling orbit, tied down by respectable society, living in the present moment. Okay, how are we doing for time, David? Are we okay?
You've only been reading for 12 minutes.
Okay, so I've got about 3 or 4 more of it. I mean, shoot on. So I go to one. So I'm sure everyone has probably done some kind of lockdown poem over the last year or so. And this is one of mine, which I think probably summed up the sense that I had, particularly early on in the early stage. This is written 16th of March, 2020. It's called A Strange Silence. A strange silence seeps into the room through the cracks between the window frames. It's as if the world outside has collectively taken a deep breath. A straining ear catches only a whiff of wind disguised as a faint hum of rubber against tarmac. I want to catch it to my hand, but it deftly evades capture, like a ghost that craves attention, but cannot change form to trespass into our dimension. And the silence moves about me with the shapeless limbs of an amoeba-like presence, surrounding me with pulsating stabs of decaying emptiness. And now it sits in a corner of my room, hunkering down like an uninvited guest. And I'm looking blankly ahead, waiting for it to leave of its own accord. Okay, so I just got 2 more, I think, to finish off here. And these are, I think, 2 most recent pieces that I've written, so bring us up to date, if you like. This first one's called A Fingerful of Dust. Fine particles of dust stuck to his fingers as he stroked them across the windowsill, leaving a thin coat covering up the prints that swirl and wall in a filial code, a barcode stamped on each hereditary fingertip, a smudge of grey detritus, all that was left to indicate the missing presence that had once filled this room, had once breathed in this dust-laden air, but was no longer present. Lifting his quiet head to take in the squared-off view through the window pane, he drank in the scene that lay before him, weighing the evidence of a previous life that once had filled his field of vision with vivid memories that grew softer, less well-defined with each passing year, the slow erosion of the passage of time taking its toll as those warming moments of remembered happiness grew tepid and cold, and the sharp bite of pain and sadness begins to dull like the grey blush on a fingerful of dust. And this one, I finished writing. I did a trip to Thailand last year, and I did one. We were in Krabi, and I decided, for some reason or other, that instead of flying from Krabi to Bangkok, which would take about an hour, no, I'll do a train journey overnight. So I booked a sleeper. And yeah, it took about sort of 15, 20 hours, which just saved a bit of time in it. And obviously I was kind of drinking in the experience, traveling the road trip to get to Surat Thani, hanging around there waiting for the train. So it's about 15, 20 minutes in length, depending on which version you get. So I'm not going to give you all that, but I will do the epilogue, the final part of it, which I did, which I think maybe is a bit of a nice bookend for this set. So it's his overnight to Bangkok, the epilogue. My journey through darkness now at an end, I can relax. Though still tired and sleep deprived, I'm trying to take it all in, but with the faint buzz of anticipation seasoned by the grey patina of a thin film of travel dust that still clings to me. I'm weary for rest and to clean up, but exhilarated by the sense of having experienced something more genuine, a bona fide traveller seeking out the less well-trodden path away from the main crowd in a dreary procession through the duty-free existence of modern-day air travel, rather than the dull trudge through arrivals and departures, chilled by pressurized air conditioning, trapped behind hermetically sealed windows. I felt the soft caress of the Thai night air wrapping itself around me like a silken scarf, heard the whisper of its hidden secrets on the buffeting slipstream of my swaying carriage as we rumbled through the night. And thank you very much.